We want you to see us and realize that we are human and that we are joining your trial, and we don't lose our humanity when we join your trial. Instead of being in my underwear, let me wear a bathing suit.
Right. Yeah.
Or put me on a table and cover me like you do with surgeries and only uncover the places that you need a picture of. There are multiple ways to do it. Put that in the protocol. Put in the protocol that I can be wearing a bathing suit. Put in the protocol I can be on a table with coverage. Put in the protocol, instead of it being as I wake up, say within 2 hours of being awake, you need to answer these questions. Trial participants are willing to do what needs to be done. We just need the trial writers to look at it as though there's a person on the other side of that trial.
All right. I think we're live. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Chintan. Before I introduce Mary, just wanted to remind everyone this is Humans of Clinical Research. So today is really special. We have a guest here who is really important to us as a Stride and a Humans of Clinical Research. Here's why. We always talk about patient centricity. We always talk about having care for patients, but in along the line of number of factors, we tend to forget about how certain decisions or how certain things do may impact patient directly or maybe indirectly. In last couple of podcasts, we have talked to patients who are experience or sharing their experiences in the clinical research. But today we have somebody who is not only actively involved in the clinical trials, have participated in the clinical trials, but working as a true patient champion who spent years in terms of working or having the voice of the patient, and some amazing work in the clinical research, more importantly in the lupus or the autoimmune disease, which is again completely different kind of, I don't want to say kind of the worm, but really different different thing when it comes to the patient or patient experiences. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mary Jo. Um, Hi, Mary. Thank you for joining. I'm super excited. Do you want to introduce yourself for everyone who is listening?
Certainly. My name is Mary Jo. I live in Alabama. I am 60 years old. I was diagnosed with lupus in 2012. I am married and we also have a dog. And since, as you see, I am at home, you may hear her bark. She is an Australian Shepherd and they are very feisty.
No, I love Boston. Yep.
So as I said, I was diagnosed in 2012. I was diagnosed very, very quickly. I did not have to go through what most lupus patients have to go through, which is years of symptoms upon symptoms, one after the other, before a doctor finally believes that they're sick. I started feeling bad, had some symptoms, fever, joint pain, joint swelling, exhaustion. I went to my doctor and I said, hey, something's wrong, what's going on, but I don't feel right. So that I had recently lost both of my, I had come thinking I was in depression. This was a get out of bed because I was depressed. I was seeing it as I was exhausted. I couldn't get out of bed. And he said, no, looking at the suspect, there's something else going on. We're going to run some tests to know what they say. And within a week of my very first appointment, the doctor said, I believe you have lupus. He sent me to a rheumatologist. Rheumatologist had a 3-month wait. I, at the time, was not worked, so I could show up whenever they had an appointment. So they put me on their list. They called and said, can you be here tomorrow? That was 2 weeks later. I said, yes. So within 3 weeks of my first appointment, I was diagnosed. He said, you have lupus. We're going to put you on standard of care. Off you go, which is very unusual, I understand. I talk to everyone. I don't know anyone who has been diagnosed as quick as I was diagnosed.
And so maybe ask you this, Mary Jo, why is different? Why autoimmune diagnosis is so different than maybe other indications?
I think, obviously not a physician, but I believe that it's because so many symptoms can mimic so many other things. If I tell you that my swollen, the first thing you might think of is, have you had an injury? Maybe it's rheumatoid arthritis. Maybe it's you're older, and I was, the weather change. Maybe it's all of these other things. And a doctor really has to know every single symptom that you have and had. Some of the questions my rheumatologist asked me, I realized that I was having prior to me knowing. I didn't know that it was unusual to have more than one or two canker sores at a time. That is common in lupus. I would have four or five, and I would just because of what I ate or what was going on in my body rather than that I had a disease that was causing this. When I was 11, I was told I was allergic to the sun because when I would be out in the sun for a long period of time, it would upset my body. My body tired. I would burn very easily. I would have these things. We're all indicative of lupus, but that way, all of the other symptoms came forward. So because you have to look at every single symptom, I think doctors, and I'm sorry to say, as women, we tend to downplay sometimes how we feel. And then when we finally say how we feel, the doctor may not realize we've actually been feeling for a month.
Makes
We
sense.
did everything we could. Now we really feel bad and we've come to see you. Thankfully, my primary care physician knew me outside of the doctor's patient setting. He knew my parents. He knew how they passed, all of that. So he was able to take all of that together and diagnose quickly. Most people don't have benefit.
This is really important point. Couple of things I got it here. Sorry, I'm having echo. I will admit to you. Couple of things I really gathered here. One is the patient journey. So I think in rheumatoid line like is primary care and into multiple patients having this journey. Couple of points I kind of gathered is one, either primarily delay identifying are basically really acting on, as you just said. So it's that is really delay in terms of getting diagnosed. And second thing, what I also getting, and you also said it the same, the first time is months period, which is in autoimmune space can be a lot for your body from day one of the actual diagnosis by primary care to actual having the rheumatologist to see you and maybe prescribe you. So if you can tell a little bit about more in terms of what you have heard into this number of patients and what's their journey looks like, especially in autoimmune space.
Their journey tends to look like doctor hopping, which is not what they're doing. They're looking for relief. They're looking for help. And they go to their primary care physician. I have a who went to her primary care physician, and they told her she was depressed and she had anxiety and she needed to. So she left and she said, "Okay, I'm depressed and I have anxiety. I'll do what I can to work on that, but I'm still exhausted and my joints still hurt and I have a fever and I don't think anxiety causes a fever. So after a few months, I'm going to go see someone else, and then they'll go see someone else, and this person will have gotten the report from that first doctor." And so now their under patient has anxiety and depression, and they're possibly not working on that. And so it's just this snow of what finally happened was my friend went to and didn't tell anyone else she was going there. She didn't bring her previous doctor's report, any of that information. She just showed up as a new patient with no information. And that doctor looked at her and said, "You have lupus." Because he was looking at her,
As a
not
holistic.
her, right, not, holistically, all of her. And he said, "These are the symptoms you have to have, need," and I don't remember what the numbers are, 4 out of 11, 6 out of 11. And she had 8. I mean, just the number extreme for her to have not been diagnosed with lupus prior to that, but no one was looking for it. And I think some now people are starting to look for it. We're finally becoming mainstream. When I was diagnosed, I knew nothing. Now, when I talk to people, most people who have at least heard of it, they know it's autoimmune. They know it's hard to diagnose. When I was diagnosed, I had heard of it, but the only thing about it was what I'd learned on TV, and that's not want to get your information. So it was then to now, it seems.
And why do you think it's changed?
Advocacy. We we wear pink in October for breast cancer awareness. We see something pink, we automatically think. I really believe that the advocacy has expanded enough so that when we at least start lupus, people know what we're talking about generally. They may not know what we go through, exhaustion, the endless blood tests, the endless exams, doctor's appointments, all of that, but they know lupus. They know part of it. Is that kind of like RA? Is that kind of like these other autoimmune diseases? And they know that. That's good. We need it to where people see purple and think lupus. Just like when we see pink, we think breast cancer. It's very important. I don't know that you can tell because of the touch. My hair is, and it's highlighted purple because when you see a 60-year-old woman walking around in a purple t-shirt and pants or shorts or whatever, and she's got purple hair, it causes questions. And so I walk around with purple hair. So people will ask me why my hair is purple. People don't ask why someone's hair is pink. No.
Yeah. And do you think, because I think that's really so see it's cut and I can see the change in terms of, and again we will talk more clinical research journey, but do you think the lupus, because it's getting into mainstream, and I'm using mainstream as in for awareness, uh, other autoimmune diseases also getting highlighted because of that?
I think they are. No one had heard of Raynaud's when my hands would go white in the winter or when someone had their air conditioning up really high, or I had a freezer to get things out and my fingertips would go white. No one understood that. Now people will sit at the grocery store and say, "Oh, you have Raynaud's. How do you know that? How?" It's coming more mainstream. It's people are accepting that lupus, our women have them. It's not a woman's, and it's not all in our head. People are realizing that real disease, people really have these issues, and it's not all in our head.
Really good point. Couple of points which I kind of gather, and sorry, maybe I might be going around this, but I really love this conversation. Is really, and you are not alone. Like talking to multiple patients with the autoimmune disease, they always pointed out two different things: it's a body and mental, meaning mental health and body health. And you're, as you said, pointed out, uh, healthcare in general tend to miss that or maybe misdiagnose because of that. Now because of the awareness, as you said, now is getting a little bit mainstream. uh, how do you think it's going to change in next few years?
I think it can only get better. I think that because it is becoming more, as we're using mainstream, more someone who has an autoimmune condition, that it will become more commonplace. Even more people will know about it. More doctors hopefully will follow suit and start to let the fact that I have brain is not a mental condition, but it is part of my lupus. And it is actually a key part that warns me a flare is coming. That is so important that when I go into my doctor and have brain fog, she knows that means I have a flare. We need it so that when other patients go into their primary care and say I have brain, they don't just write that off to something else. They say that could be part of SIGR. We need primary carers better trained into looking into these RA, Raynaud's, whatever autoimmune. I mean, there's a list of them that it could be. Let's look into it and see if be one of these that also causes. Don't just take brain fog as the only symptom.
So I think you mentioned your as a lupus patient, when you had the diagnosis, what it feels like. What is the week look like? And this is why I'm asking is to kind of have more awareness about who as a patient having going through lupus related all these different conditions, associate conditions as well, that not to forget, it doesn't come, I know we talk about that, it's just one autoimmune disease, is tend to bundle. But just to, for the perspective of somebody who doesn't know or doesn't know how to feel, because it's very hard to visualize, right? For example, I was in conference in the dermatology side, so they had they had really good presentation on HS, or it's basically you can have a picture to kind of show what it looks like, and it's you can have a certain representation. But in the autoimmune case, of course, some of the physical character there, but other than that, what it feels like being in that shoes and going through your daily life or daily routine with the condition.
So every decision I make is based on how I feel. My main Now, I'm not talking about fatigue where I can sit down and put my feet up for 15 minutes and I'm all better. I'm talking about fatigue that you might feel if you had the. So when I wake up in the morning, my eyes open up, I assess my body and gee, do I have? Am I going to have a light eat? Am I able to make breakfast? Am I going to be able to take something out for dinner or will my cooking? Am I able to wash a load of clothes? Am I able to do some work is from home unless I'm traveling for a conference? So every decision I make is based on how much energy I have. The plan this morning, because I missed, was I was going to get up and have breakfast, ready, do this, and go to lunch. And when I woke up this morning, I had a good night's sleep. So that helps. So I should be able to do, I will have to will I be going to the rec center guys? Will I be going to the mall to walk around? Is also exercise, or will I be coming home and on, which will allow me to rest? Or am I coming home and taking a nap? But literally every single decision I make is based on my fatigue. And that starts from my eyes until the moment I crawl into bed is what a fatigue level, what level am I at, and can I do what I want to do? Um, and I think that is most lupus patients, that is certainly lupus patients I've spoken to. We all have our day run based on how we feel at that moment. And plans can change in an instant. Before I was diagnosed and I had lupus, I would suddenly feel I would be in my living room. I would stand up to walk across the floor, to go into my bedroom to take a nap. I would make it halfway and I would lie on the floor and take a nap. On the floor, I would just, and I would take a nap because I had no more energy to take even one more. And at the time, I was a teenager, and dad would say, "Mom's asleep on the floor. What do I do?" Cover her up and hand her a pillow. If not, it's okay. Because I fell asleep on the floor because the fatigue so overwhelming, I couldn't take another step.
And maybe I will be. This is something I wanted to relate to clinical research community. This regular when we designed the protocol, and again, we're going to talk more about this in later, but I wanted to basically put a pin on this and relate to that. We had the actual patient last week. Yeah, we had a lupus patient, and it was a dosing day, first dose. Long day. It's like 6 to 8 hours. And yeah, patient actually had nap, and we make sure patient is comfortable, give everything what we can. And that's really important because when we design not just protocol, but from the site's perspective, because when we get it, 99% we already have protocol and everything is there for us to follow. So we design our visit based on that, knowing what you just said. So one, if we usually offer lift no matter what. So that goes under IRB. We say, okay, this is something. The reason, not that lupus, as a patient, you cannot drive, not that. But we're going to give the comfort to make sure, even if you can take a little bit nap, you have that care. Somebody, not everybody is lucky enough to have throughout. But if you have an option, then of course that can be reimbursed. Food and everything, because as you just your day, it's very hard for as a patient to plan your day. And as you said, it's really how you wake up and your day will be designed around that. So how to make sure that we give enough comfort for that day, which is not possible in your regular clinic visit, but your regular clinic visit is not that long. So yeah, as you know, like clinical trial visit usually for especially autoimmune disease goes from 2 hours to 4, 6, 8 hours. So again, that's really good point. And now more like for others who may not know more about lupus patient or why what they feel like or what they feel like. It's important in that perspective. So that kind of segue into our next segment, which is the clinical research. So can you tell us more about the first time you heard about clinical trial? What was your reaction? And then, of course, we're going to talk about how you go in and maybe on one and all of those.
So I have been in 2 clinical trials. The first one came about because what physicians call standard of care was not working. My physician, my rheumatologist, that basically had nothing else to offer me. So I went into a trial because I had what I felt no other option. Obviously, I could have said no, and he would have come up with something, but my options were very limited. Talked about it. He gave me a small bit of information about it and sent me home. And I live 2 hours from my site. So I crossed the whole way home that they had nothing else to offer me but for me to enter a clinical trial. And everything I'd heard about clinical trials was negative. I went out it. So I went home with my husband because he had to drive because I was feeling bad enough. I spent 4 hours in one day. And we started researching, started reading about the specific trial he had talked about. He gave me the name of the trial, the information for clinicaltrials.gov, which is where we can find as much information as we can find. I went to the website for the pharmaceutical company. I started researching and eventually came to the conclusion that this was probably the best choice for me. So I contacted him and said yes. And that probably took 3 days. After that, I researched what I was going to do. I didn't just say yes. So I called him and then after a few more days and not quite a week, the research nurse did me and said, I'd like to set up an appointment to go over the informed consent, to take all of the testing, to see if you qualify, all of that information. So my husband and I drove back to the research site and did that. Although I liked my research nurses, I think they probably went over the informed consent a little bit more. Although and my husband and I are not uneducated people, we did not know all of what entailed being part trial. So that was my first research trial. It ended when it not meeting its endpoints. And so I went back to my physician, and he was also my research physician. So thankfully, he was up to date on everything that was going on. I didn't have to go back to him and say, okay, now this is what I've done. He knew what had happened. And we tried a couple of other options, and then another trial opened. And that was a couple of years later. And I joined that trial. I knew a little bit more about trials at that point. I knew a little bit better how to research them and how to read the informed consent. And so I joined that trial, and I was in that trial for 4.5 years. That was a long trial.
Long trial, yeah.
Long trial. That was a phase 2 trial. The first one was a phase 3.
Interesting. Lot of questions. So, so first thing is really finding out. So you are exactly right. In our experience, rheumatologists are more open for clinical research than anybody, and because there is a treatment options usually, like there is not much to offer, and usually the new treatment, which is good. Like as an industry, we are in the right direction. We are finding treatment, especially cell gene therapy trials with the new treatment options. It's coming lot of we are seeing a lot of those, which is good. Second, research. So we were pleasantly surprised a couple of years back when we were at the Lupus run. We were a little bit hesitant on talking about gene therapy and type of T cell engager and all of those. So my partner, who is a chief medical officer, she was a little bit hesitant talking to community about the T cell engager because we thought it would be too much technical or too much medical to kind of cover. And to our surprise, we found that no, they actually want that. So luckily, we talked to one of the kind of somebody like you. So we talked to her, and she's like, "No, do they know about everything?" So can you tell us more about as a community, as a lupus and autoimmune in general, how why there is more aware about the treatments and different side of the treatments and more prone to research about options being your rights.
I think it's because no one else knows anything. And that sounds terrible. But if I go to my current research and I start research, she does not know what current research is out there. She does not know there's a T cell engager or a CAR T cell trial going on in my closest hospital, the research hospital. She know that. And I don't think it's because she doesn't care. She has a lot on her plate. She doesn't just deal with lupus. She deals with all of those rheumatic diseases. So she doesn't know. We have to advocate for ourselves. We have to find out what's out there because there are so few treatments. When I was diagnosed with lupus, there was one was actually dedicated to lupus, one treatment. And if that didn't work, you were out of luck. So, and it takes so long to take that one treatment, and 6 months later, you're still feeling the same. Then they say, maybe this one isn't working. I've just wasted life on this one treatment that doesn't work, and there's not another option. So we have to know our disease. We have to know what options are out there. We have to know what trial out there. We have to do our own research because no one else is going to do it for us. No one else is going to scour clinicaltrials.gov. No one else is going to go to every particular site of a pharmaceutical company to see if they have lupus research. We have to do that. We have to advocate for ourselves, doing that for us. Now, there are advocacy groups we can join and to be part of that and to advocate with, and I do that. But the most important advocate I can have is me looking to see, am I willing to join this trial? Am I willing to drive this far? Willing to take a plane to a location and stay in a hotel for 2 weeks? And I think most researchers will find the answer is yes. We are willing to drive 2 hours, stay the night in a hotel, travel, do whatever we can because one of the things to say is no one joins a drug trial because we feel off and we want to feel better. We remember that life before lupus stole it from us and we want that life back. And the way to get that back is to get a treatment or a cure for this terrible disease that we have. So that's willing to go wherever we need to do. As I told researchers, if you need to stand on my head in the corner for an hour, just make me feel better.
That is really true, and what we are experiencing based on the community as in the autoimmune space. They're more aware, and they would wait for a certain trial. So we had the one trial in lupus. Of course, there was waiting on cohort to open, and we had other trial which was more available, but they were ready to wait for another because of the treatment options, and they read about it. They're more futuristic kind of data wise. It looks more promising. So patient, at least we had a couple of them ready to wait that because of one is aware knowing, and as you said, the reason what you just pointed more on the human factor, right? Understanding what you go through and you would like to do better with that treatment, and your only hope is to get the best treatment out there. So thank you for that. Second, I think what I heard, which is interesting, was ICF consent process, which is very, I wouldn't say controversial, but like one of the topics we talk about. There is always, as a kind of standard, everybody in the research, they know, as per the GCP guideline, we have to give ample time for patient to go through that. But when it comes to delivering, I also had talked about in the past, it really changes depending on site to site, and sometimes person to person. Of course, very few, some of the sites, like what we do is we try to make it more standardized with the SOP and make sure we have that standard process. But maybe hearing directly from you based on your experience, and you mentioned about the consent, what is the best way you would think as a patient who is entering into clinical research? maybe first time, right? You have, as you said, you had second time you were more aware, so you knew what you. But let's say if you're looking the ICF consent form first time, how would you like that to be handled?
I think if you are a first-time patient in research, I think someone should go over the informed consent, certainly paragraph by paragraph. And someone should read that paragraph aloud, whether, or even if you don't want someone to read aloud to you, have them read it and then tell them what that really means. How is that really going to affect you? So, um, and I can't think of off the top of my head what a paragraph would be because it's 10 pages long, but every bit of it and tell them what that means to them. Something I didn't realize in the beginning of my first trial was that when that trial ended, whether it ended because it didn't meet its endpoints or when it ended because it was over, I didn't realize that the pharmaceutical company would drop, boop, done. Thanks for your time. Goodbye. I'm sorry, I just gave you a year and a half of life and you've dropped me like a hot potato. You could have an extra appointment to tell me what to do now. To say, we're so sorry that this trial has ended any more injections, but hand this to your provider. Give this mean what happened. Let me explain why this didn't work. I received a phone call and in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week, over a year into my trial saying, thanks for your time. Bye. I went back for one appointment to drop off the extra supplies that I had. That was it. That's terrible. How can you treat a patient their life to you?
Right.
I have
Yeah.
given you my life. I'm taking a drug that has not been by the FDA. You do not know what that may not do to me now or in the future. And I am willing to put life in your hands. I trust you. I trust you when I hand over my life to you. You lose trust when you drop me like a hot potato. Trusted you. Now I don't. Now I need to treat me right.
Yeah. That's re- and
So if it were that this was not going to be, this may not work out. And if it doesn't, this is what happens. And it's like 3 sentences. That should be a page. I was in a phase 2 trial. When that trial ended, my doctor kept, they'll probably roll you into 3. They'll roll you into 3. No, they don't. They don't roll you into 3. And it needed to say that you will not be rolled into the phase 3 trial if its trial continues. This trial ends, you will be done. And it should be up to know that. And if it's not in the informed consent, if it's not in the protocol, the doctor needs to tell you. When this trial is over, it's over. You're joining this trial for the term of the trial, and that's it. Then it's done. Then it's over.
it's really, I will say this. Clinical research is more than protocol. And especially when we have patient journey, it's really important to know what patient what what patient feels like or why they're having or what they're feeling, and it changes indication to indication. Even autoimmune space is different from having somebody with the Sjogren versus having lupus. Of course, some of the symptoms will be the same or some of the characteristics, but it's really varies, and also patient to patient as well. So I always, whenever we have chance to talk to sponsor or CRO or anybody, usually that's the one thing we always say, that at least have your somebody to look for the patient journey, like visit by visit. Um, Pre-screening, what is the patient journey looks like, what are the information they will need, how you can serve that better. And with the AI, that's again certainly other topic, but patients are aware, and especially autoimmune space, patients are more aware as we talk. So if we can have those covered in terms of patient journey from before even they consider your study, and how, and we talked to, I think last month we talked to another kind of patient champion on the cardiology side, and she said the same thing. She gave years of her life, and of course she got the second life because of clinical research. But after 5 years, there was nothing, like she doesn't know anything about how that study went, how that drug is doing, what is the data looks like. So, and that's something history, and I'm not blaming one person or other. As an industry, we should do better. And of course, we made a lot of changes in terms of how we communicate. Even somebody completes the study, give them update. Hey, by the way, the study you participated, the data looks really promising. It's going to phase 3, or it's got the approval, those kind of stuff. And they are part of something. It's like achievement, right? Because as you said, you sign up as a patient for the clinical research with the minimal information you can get, and you're signing up your life on that. So you deserve it's, if not appreciation, but at least the visibility or transparency throughout the research.
Yes, we should. We as we deserve at least information. I realize that some information can't be given to us, and the whole idea of having a placebo, understand the whole idea of having a double-blind trial, that all makes sense. What doesn't make sense is at the end, you can't tell us how it did. Why didn't it meet the endpoints? What were we looking for that we didn't get? Now, I will say in my second trial, about a year and a half after that ended, a year after that trial ended, I received an email from the biopharmaceutical company how the trial did. Now, I knew how it did, because I knew it went into phase 3. And because of the Advocacy, I was given information from advocacy groups of how it did. So I knew that, but most people wouldn't know that. Right. Most patients in that trial didn't get that information until a year after that trial ended. But it was nice to get. It was nice. Said, "Oh, thank you for being part of our trial. This was very important to us." That was important to me. That they probably don't realize how important that was to me, or how important that is to their patients, to simply have the acknowledgement of, yes, you were in our trial. Yes, you did us. And here's the information we
The one thing I gather, last thing from your initial, like your experience of your clinical trial, common and more than people realize, is how far patient can go for the research. You mentioned 2 hours, and we have seen patients driving for miles away, or flying in certain cases, because let's say it's a rare disease and there is no center around. And of course, we help them to find center around if we can. But but overall, the biggest thing I can see is also the diversity in the clinical research and having the accessibility to the research. And as we both know, lupus is again impacting lots of Black or Hispanic community, especially women in that those population, and they are not representing trials. And as we kind of covering it throughout the discussion, it's not about, they are aware that they need more help and they are looking for that. It's not about clinical research awareness now anymore. It's more about the accessibility. So I know we briefly talk in like past in our offline communication, but can you tell me about, as you are more involved in this, what is your 2 cents on accessibility, especially those underrepresented communities?
So part of the problem with any research for anyone to participate, just overall, is the amount of time and money we spend. As I said before, I drove 2 hours each way for my appointment. Appointments were 2 to 4 hours. That's an entire day that my husband had to take off work. I work from home. I didn't have to take off work. But if I worked full time, and many people with lupus have to work full time so they have insurance, they have to take a full day off work. A trial may require you to be there every other week. So now I'm taking a day off, and it's taking a day off work every other week. And maybe I have children. Maybe my children, maybe I don't have an adult child. Maybe my child is 6. So now childcare. And because of our limitations, often it doesn't matter if the biopharmaceutical is willing to pay mileage. The IRB says no. Maybe the pharmaceutical company is willing to pay for me or a hotel, but the IRB says no. Everything has to be approved so many times. So if you are a sole caregiver to your children, even if you can drive, it's going to watch your children. And lupus affects young women.
Right.
Young women of color. These are the people affected most by lupus. And these are the people who can't spare a day every 2 weeks to go to it. And as horrible as it may sound, we need trials on the weekend. We need trials locally. We need to decentralize these trials. Right now, I can go to 2 different trial sites. I'm smack dab at 2 different trial sites. One is 2 hours to the east and hours to the west. Why can't it be at my local hospital on a Saturday or on a Thursday evening? Let me come in on Thursday evening. Now, like I said, I'm in full position that I work from home, been in his job over 20 years. If he has to take me to the doc for a day, they don't care. He's salaried. He can do his work at home. He can do whatever he needs to do to make it work. Most people aren't in my position, and I know that. People cannot take the time off work that they need to take off to be a part of a trial. They cannot travel and spend 2 weeks in a hotel to be part. Who is going to be able to take off for 2 weeks and leave their family for 2 weeks? The children. They're just going to leave their children at home while to work. Mom's going to take off 2 weeks. It's untenable to do it. Trials don't think about it.
And as you pointed out, it's not just, and that's something we go day in and day out with each individual protocol and with the sponsor. And to your point, usually sponsor and CRO knows this, and they are really flexible in terms of reimbursement. But on the IRB's eyes, how can we make it more visible? Uh, so that something is always the question. Usually, also IRB is getting better. Like other day, I actually today or yesterday I saw that some like somebody got the pet care, child care, uh, all of those as a part of IRB, and I'm like, there you go. I don't even realize that now. Basically, we try to put that as a lump of reason, but I would rather have line by line and for IRB to make it better and to understand. And each not everybody have a pet, not everybody have kids, but that can bring a lot of things to like or have the clinical trial more accessible. I think really good point. Yeah.
I think so. To put it in perspective, I drove just over 100 miles, just over 200, let's round it to 250. I was $40 a visit. That didn't pay for gas. And lunch, because that's full time at the trial, etc., really subsidized to be in their trial. You can't ask that of people. I mentioned the friend earlier. It's actually a neighbor. She lives right down the street from me. She has lupus. We found out that we both have lupus. We had the same doctor. Trial. She has 3 children.
There you go.
Because she needed childcare. She needed transportation because her husband couldn't take off work. And it's a 2-hour drive. So Uber isn't an option. She needs actual transportation. She needs she couldn't join. She literally, we actually say, okay, what if since our visits were on the same day, and then she could come with me, but then childcare. She couldn't get childcare because IRB wouldn't approve it.
It's a long
You just
commitment.
lost a patient.
Yeah. It's not
you
just
just lost a
our,
patient.
yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed.
you lost a patient in you wouldn't pay for care for 8 hours once a month.
Particularly patient lose chance to even be
Yes,
have next wave of treatment or no outcome.
that goes
So
without saying. Yes,
yeah.
you lose a patient. That patient goes without treatment or is stuck in the treatment that they're currently in, where they're looking for research because they're not feeling good.
Right. So, and I know we are a little bit over, but I really like this conversation. So maybe I'm going to have maybe last in the past about the protocol. So let's say if you are sitting in the room with the sponsor, what is the one thing you would ask sponsor, whether it's a protocol or trial experience? I know with the in general patient journey, but if you had a chance to be on the table and talk to the sponsor, it would be.
Don't ask your don't ask patients to do something that you wouldn't be willing to ask your wife, sir, girlfriend, mother to do. And I'm saying females because lupus affects mostly females. Not willing to ask your wife to do anything, then you shouldn't be willing to ask me because I am someone's wife. If you're not willing to ask your mother to do something, don't ask them because I am someone's mother. First experience I had in a trial was, and the photographs were taken in my underwear. I am a plus-sized, modest woman, and I had photographs taken under a bright light I had just met, close-ups of my body. That's necessary. There are better to do that. And if you wouldn't ask your mother to stand in the picture taken of her, and don't ask me. That covers so many things that we are asked to do. If your family isn't willing to do it, why are you expecting my family willing to do it? That covers devices that we have that have alarms that go off at I that we have to respond to, pictures that we have to take out from under us because they're not meeting the endpoint with no explanation. Um, all of those things that you ask us to do, if you wouldn't ask your family member to do it, why are you asking us to do it? There's got to be a better way.
Just humanize the protocol. Like,
Exactly. Humanize so that we want to do your protocol, that we're not going there dreading what we have to do next.
really good. And again, nothing, I don't want to, but it's a real example. So we had positively changed one of the the dermatology trial where dermatology is required because the way it's, but we were able to kind of change in like, we like, okay, not this area or certain area only. Like we had good conversation with the subject matter expert, which is investigate. Like we had two dermatologists, discuss with their medical monitor, who is the medical authority on the protocol side. So we had a good conversation, and then they were able to positively change that. In fact, yesterday was part of one of the selection visit, and to your point, like patient. So it was like a patient reported outcome, and patient needs to report there as soon as they wake up and spend 20 to 30 minutes every day. And first thing, and also bravo to the investigator, because C and I were on the same page. We weren't worrying about losing the study as a site. Important thing is to, as a patient point of view, and to your patient, if I'm my mom or anybody, like if my family member is doing that every morning, is that the right thing? Would you have them to go through every morning 20 to 30 minutes going through painful thing? And they basically, yeah, of course, we were having multiple decisions related to or different options, I would say, to kind of come up with a person, right? Those are something, those are the changes we need to be more vocalized. It needs to be by somebody who are as a kind of as an authority in that space, also from the site's perspective, or CRO or whoever is involved in that process needs to be more and more vocal about those changes. How can we make it more humanized?
Yes, I agree. Instead of being in my underwear, let me wear a bathing suit.
Right. Yeah.
Or put me on a table and cover me like you do with Stryde, cover the places that of. There are multiple ways to do it. Put that in the protocol. Don't put in the protocol that I need to be and it wasn't need to be standing in a corner under a light with pictures this distance from my body. Protocol that I can be wearing a bathing suit. Put in the protocol I can be on a table with coverage. For your protocol, put in the protocol instead of it being as I wake up, say within 2 hours of being awake, you need to answer these questions because trial participants are willing to do what needs to be done. We just need the trial writers to look at it as though there's a person on the other side of that trial. We want you to see us and realize that we are human and that we are joining your trial, and we lose our humanity when we join your trial. We continue with that humanity. We want to do what you need, but to help us do it more easily and more understanding on our side than the first 30 minutes we're awake answering questions. Let us get up, go to the bathroom, eat a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, then answer your questions. Give us a couple of hours. Those questions are not going to change, not in 2 hours. Just give us a little bit. Let us fully wake up. No one wants to do anything before that first blast of caffeine. Let us wake up. Let us be part of the world before we have to answer your questions. And let us wear a bathing suit.
Makes sense.
Just very simple changes would make trials much more attractive.
Very good. So maybe last, I know we are almost at the hour.
Nurse or pharmaceutical company should say not important. If it's important to you, it is important. So you should ask all of the questions that you want to ask. And that applies not just to trials, but to any doctor's appointment. If you go into your urologist and you're walking out of there with unanswered questions, that's a problem. You need your questions answered before you walk out that door. And if you understand something, speak up so that you understand going on. You don't want to not know something, to go home and research it. That first week walked out with so many questions. I didn't ask any of them, and I had to research it on my own. Ask the question, get that information before you walk out the door. And for biopharmaceutical companies, sponsors, I think I would ask of your patients what you wouldn't ask of your family members. Remember that we are human beings and we deserve that respect and that dignity that every human. And if you start to treat us like a patient rather than a person, you're going to start to lose us. When you lose us, we may be gone forever because we trust you. If we lose our trust, we may not come back.